Hey there, YouTube peoples. Welcome to Socially Single. I'm V. And as you see in the title, this is going to be about Rick and Trish from 90 Day Fiance before the 90 days, specifically regarding Tell All Part 1 and Part 2. I broke this up by couple because I'm long-winded and I can be a bit verbose and super loquacious, so feel free to put me on in the background as I'm going to be sharing my thoughts and my biased opinions, which is is that a double entendre? Because isn't like a bias an opinion? Because, an opinion and bias, is like your opinion, but like with a bias. See, boom, focus. So, we're going to be talking about Rick and Trish. And so if you have not seen my video about them previously discussing what they presented to us with their story and over the season, feel free to look at that video to get that additional context regarding to what we'll be talking about in this video that was brought up during the tell-all. Okay, so I went off on Rick a lot in that other video, and that is going to continue, to be clear. And so just want to kind of give you a heads up. I feel not want to say vindicated, but I feel validated in my opinions based off what he showed us in the tell-all. So let's talk about the looks, which I'll be putting up on the screen as well. Rick came in arrogant, and he had on a very shiny suit, very sparkly. And while I think the colors do complement his skin complexion, I would say those were comparable or complementary colors that he was wearing. He looked like a 52-year-old who wants attention, which is what he is. And so he definitely caught the eyes, and that, I don't know how good of a thing that is, but I was not a fan. I was not a fan of his looks. We jump into with them, before we even get into their story. One of the very first things that we got in the first episode was Trish exposing that she is pregnant, and so of course she is absolutely ecstatic about being pregnant. And of course, the natural question that we all had is Rick the dad? And Rick is not the father. And I am so happy for her. It's clear, and I said in the first one that I am a bit biased towards Trish because I think Trish is absolutely gorgeous, and I think that Trish has all of smart potential that can that might happen for her if she makes the right decisions. Trish was clear at the very beginning when we met her that she wanted a baby, and we have not traveled to Madagascar before in the previous seasons, and so it can be easy to kind of maybe compare cultures. But when we met her family, they were ready to kick Rick's ass if he would not give her a baby. And they also made it clear that if he didn't give her a baby, he will be banned, dismissed from Trisha's life, period. And which I thought was a bit harsh, and I don't understand that. But there's another pertinent layer to this baby thing. Trish, as a reminder, was abandoned by her mother at a young age, when she was still, I think, 1 or 2 years old. And we got the perception that she doesn't even remember her mom. So with her wanting to not only make her family happy, but also being a midwife, working with babies often, and helping people through their pregnancies, well, delivering babies, I should say, and their pregnancies. This was something that she made very clear on multiple occasions that was important to her. And Rick lured that and dangled that in front of her, knowing good and goddamn well he was not trying to have another baby. Rick already has 5 kids, and 2 of them are under 10 years old. So, I'm like I said, I'm glad that she is not with that Rick is not the father, because we've already seen this situation, right, on countless occasions, right here, even just here in the States, right? So I was happy to hear that. Now we get into what has been going on in the 7 months that they have stopped filming. And of course, now here to tell all. So how pregnant is Trish? Trish is 6 months pregnant. And so she got pregnant pretty much a month after Rick had left, 1 or 2 months after Rick had left Madagascar. And of course, they both have dated different people since then. So in Trisha's case, she began talking to a work colleague, and while they were on a work trip, that she had met him and they got close, and they went to Indonesia for her birthday, and and she got pregnant by him. They are no longer together, but she did at least say that while they're not going to be in a relationship, he will be a part of the baby's life, and he is in communication with her regarding the status of the pregnancy and the baby. So there was definitely I've seen some conversation and about the fact of Trisha nothing but a hoe, and she just wanted to she'll take anything just to have a baby, and maybe that might be true. I think that she was a bit reckless, of course, with not using protection with someone that she had just been with, and even especially if she wasn't using protection with Rick. That was definitely a careless thing. And so when it came to that, I don't know why, and this is the part where I said I might be biased. That just didn't bother me too much. Is what she wanted. I would not have been surprised if she may have started IVF for herself, if she, at some point, if she could afford to have access to that. And of course, I think it will be devastating if she could not have children. And if she could not have kids, I think that Trish would find a way to have it, because she's thinking that this is going to be something that's going to help with her trauma to being abandoned. So she has something to prove. On top of the pressures in her culture, in her family. And keep in mind, her family is like, 9 or 12 people deep just in one house, if not more. So there's a lot riding on this. And it might not, and she might have to be ready to have another kid based on what I felt her family was suggesting when it comes to how important kids are to their culture and extending their lifeline, their lineage throughout generations. So, of course, she's happy, very full face, and she's like 5 or 6 months pregnant. And we get into Rick. In the first video, I really went off on Rick because I said the time to where, when it comes to when we see Black people, Black Americans, as myself being a Black American on these shows, we tend to have a positive or negative bias and opinion sometimes with them, especially if we just notice certain things that are very synonymous with our own personal lived experience. It's not saying that it does not happen in other cultures or for other races, or different locations. Sometimes I'm not speaking for every American, but I am going to try to narrow it down to me. That we tend to either be a bit more supportive because they're Black, or we're more harsher because they're Black. At this point, when it comes to Rick, and I'm going to reveal, of course, what was said, he is just truly a disgusting man. That is a trifling man. And V, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? Get to the meat. Let's talk about Rick, what happened with Rick. First off, I mentioned that he bought some trash bags or some tarps to Madagascar. And he had said he had went out and bought them before going to the trip because he was informed that Trish can have very heavy flows when she is intimately excited. And so he brought this tarp, this pad, because he didn't want to have to pay for any hotel damages or bed sheets, room damages and bed sheets. That is already a very wild thing to do. It's even wilder that you would even mention that on public television. And it's outright disrespectful to your partner, unless this is something that you both are, using, but instead you're trying to use it as a clout or a flex. Because we have learned at this point that with Rick, the only thing that this man cares about is getting his dick wet. That is it. That is all this man cares about. He's a passport dude who goes to different countries trying to get what he cannot really pull here in the States. And he's trying, and he wants to do that all the time. When I travel, he ain't trying to go on no adventures. The only thing this man really cares about is having sex. That's it. That is it. He cares more about that more than Trish cares about having a baby, to be quite frank with you. And even worse, this tarp splash pad thing wasn't even new. This was something that he had used with multiple women, including the Colombian ex. That's disgusting. That is, and I get that it's plastic and you can wash plastic and all that, but it's also plastic. So you can only wash it so well because certain residue is not going to disintegrate or be rubbed off or washed off because of the very nature of it being plastic. And it's not going to wash like a bed sheet would when it comes to fluids and accidents in bed. It's not going to wash even so the same way. That's disgusting. It's disgusting. And the cast at least agreed on the fact that that's nasty. That's nasty. It's unhygienic. It's disgusting. And it was also disrespectful to Trish to even get into how heavy her flow might be, whether, when she's excited or not. That is it's uncouth. It's inappropriate for the audience. It truly is. And so, what else happens? Remember, Rick has this thing of acting like a child and having these sorrowful moments where we're supposed to feel sorry or guilty for him. And so his face contorts and I really need to cut my glass because I look too good with my glasses. I just really want to, I'm just so, I'm talking too loud. I'm just so sorry. And I just love Trish, and Trish is supposed to be mine like forever. And I'm just wondering if she'll ever forgive me. And I messed up and I made mistakes, but I'm willing to change all that for her. And I just have a problem for being alone. Nigga, you was 50-something motherfucking years old. If you don't speak up with your whole motherfucking chest and your whole voice and talk about what the fuck you really want in life, ooh, he makes my booty itch. He provided enough evidence to show how much of a filthy, disgusting, trash nigga he really is during this tell-all. So we find out that I told you that when we left Trisha's family and they were headed back to Madagascar, wherever city in Madagascar that they were at originally before they went to see her family. At the airport during a layover, he had been entertaining his Colombian ex, which is, already a problem for Trish. And Trish at that point found out, locked herself in the bathroom, changed her seat. When they got back to that city in Madagascar, she went to her apartment, he went to his hotel room, and they were supposedly done. And so when that happened, because before we get to how he met up with Trish near the end before he was supposed to leave, and her coming to the airport to bring back a costume, right? Crazy work. He was like, well, instead of me leaving, instead of me feeling bad about myself in a hotel room, I'm going to get out this hotel room and try to uplift my spirits. Now, he was presenting himself to be extremely sorrowful through this filming during the season. And just like feeling so bad and just so lonely and blah, blah, blah. This mofo went to a bar, saw women eating chicken or some shit, and then he turned his game on and he ended up in bed with the woman in less than 24 hours. Let's just get past all the foolishness. And mind you, this is only maybe a day or two after they just got back from seeing her family. But you love her? This was supposed to be your wife? This was you're out here looking for who you're going to settle with? And then people are like, Rick, you're afraid of being alone. He's like, yeah, I'm afraid of being alone. But yet, while the cast acknowledged that and he said that, there was no additional discussion regarding how you're womanizing and how you're fucking with these women's feelings with your antics. And honestly, you're being extremely self-serving, but you're trying to put it in the mask of you're also someone's knight in shining armor. I would not be surprised because Rick was married previously, I think once or twice. I wouldn't be surprised if you were cheating throughout a marriage. You don't probably know how to be committed. We also find out that, and this is the part where I have to correct what I said in the earlier video. So, there was a big storyline, secret, where he was really getting on Trish for ghosting him for 5 days when she was dealing with a lot of issues with her family. And I had previously said that because he felt like she ghosted him, he had booked a trip to Colombia and went to be with his ex instead. And he presented it as that trip had happened during those 5 days or right after it, and they were not necessarily talking because he felt so hurt from that. So while he was in Colombia, they were not on speaking terms. They were just trying to figure things out. Whatever. Well, I was wrong, because Rick informs us that he had booked the trip to Colombia during those 5 days that Trish wasn't necessarily talking to him. And I'm using the keyword talking because she was clear and he had to agree with her previously that while they were not on the phone speaking verbally, they were texting back and forth within those 5 days. She wasn't responding to every message and not as timely as he had become accustomed to. However, there was communication. I want to make sure that's put in there. However, he booked the trip to Colombia, and X amount of weeks later, he then took the trip to Colombia after him and Trish had made up, quote unquote, had made up from him feeling hurt from that time frame. So while he was in Colombia, they were already back together in what he described as being on good terms. So you were just fucking around, right? And for someone who claimed that you love her and you're the right man for her, and you have acknowledged and accepted that she broke up with her ex because he was a cheater. So she also has her own trauma from being cheated on. You did the same thing. And then when you told her about what you did, you left out those little details. When you told her when she was isolated on the island with you. You a calculated motherfucker. Like, this is the way I say when Rick is trifling, he is trifling. And I can understand, and I have came across people who just have a fear of being alone. And they don't feel at peace if they're not with somebody, even if it is toxic, because at least you're arguing back and forth with somebody versus talking to yourself at home, I guess. So I don't get it, but I do understand people who might have that. Where you miss me completely with that is the selfish nature behind being someone like that. You're weaponizing your feelings, or their feelings, to your benefit. And I'm never going to be okay with that. I'm never going to be okay with this. So I was disappointed to hear that 3 or 4 months, Trish had confirmed that they had kind of just been texting a little bit back and forth. And while Rick was saying, he was trying to get back with her, Trish has been very resistant. And Trish got a lot of smoke, which I gotta be honest, she does deserve this a bit. Trish did get some smoke for the fact of even you entertaining him beyond you showing up to the airport. You had already said you were going to cut him out of your life and block him from everything. And you had claimed you had did that, quote unquote, on the show where we saw you deleting his contact or blocking his contact. And there's this thing of where she's like, hey, I still have feelings for him. He made me feel some type of way. And here's the thing, people. It is okay. It is okay to have a moment of vulnerability, to be honest with yourself and whomever else is relevant to the conversation that I have feelings for this person. There's residual. Really what it is, you have residual feelings about what that person represented that made you feel how you feel. I recently was watching an episode of Worst Ex Ever, and there was one in the first episode, it's on Netflix, where the girl had got her ass beat 2 times within 3 years, and somehow he ended up back at her apartment where, again, she almost got her ass beat again, and almost died. And I'm sitting here thinking, let me just put this out there. I'm in a very privileged position where I have not been an aggressor or victim of any domestic violence situation. So no, I don't know what it is to be in that situation. And I'm not going to claim to come from that perspective. And I know that I can say some judgmental things. So I want to just put it out there. It's not my intent to berate the person. I am going to tell you that I do think that I like to have conversation, especially when it comes to spreading awareness about certain things. I want to understand a frame of mind that says, you remember the good times, but how do we forget the bad times? And is there a way you can remember the bad times enough to use that as motivation to not find yourself in positions that have already hurt you, that you have identified truly bothered you and disturbed your peace ultimately? And when it comes to the fact of, do I think Trish is really considering being back at Rick? I don't know. Rick said that he's waiting for her to give him the go ahead to return back to Madagascar, and he claims that he's willing to even take care of this other kid's baby. Nigga, you don't even take care of your own kids. And we had this part where, Rick got, whoa, I'm a better father than you could ever hope to be. I don't believe that shit. Why don't I believe it, V? Because Rick had been back to Colombia. He had already taken a new woman he was talking to from Madagascar. Because I told you somebody, they were together for about 3 or 4 months. The birthday trip he had supposedly planned for Trish, he used that on the new girl, which they weren't together, not a big deal, but it just shows to the pettiness and trifling nature of who this man is. And it's interesting to me that you have time to take these long trips, because from my understanding, these are not just weekend trips. This mofo is taking 1-2 week trips, 3-4 week trips. Where in the fuck is your kids? Because he has not ever once said that he takes his kids with him on these trips. And of course, he can't be if he's fucking all, according to him, they screw all day long, multiple times, because he wants to make sure that he knows that he's getting his dick wet constantly. And again, I don't really believe that. I just don't. I think that he's putting on a show to amp himself up for an areas which that he's probably lacking. So I can't relate to that. And because I can't relate to that, I don't know why he feels me to do that. So when it comes to that, I don't believe Trish is really trying to get back at Rick. What I do think is that Trish has not matured enough to be a woman in the sense of like, I hold myself in such a higher standard to where I'm going to be very clear with you as to what you're not going to do to me ever again. She's not there yet. And she about ain't been hurt enough to be there just yet. And this is where, and this is probably the result of not having certain maternal figures in her life, and even the right paternal guidance to say, this is your worth, and you have got to protect that worth at all cost. And that means that you don't need to be out here sleeping with every guy. You don't have to settle for a nigga like Rick, and you don't have to settle for a nigga like your ex, because money actually can cause more problems than fixing problems sometimes. So you don't have to be with a cheater. You can pull someone who is going to be just for you. You don't have to throw that beautiful body around to have this. Not saying that you can't be sex positive and you can't be body positive. What I'm saying is there's a certain value that I think that Trish has acknowledged, but she doesn't know how to implement in an effective way that protects her spirit. That's firmly something that I do believe, because she even said she was conflicted and all that. I don't think she want that man. I don't. I think that when I saw Trish throughout this whole thing, Trish was very quick to remind Rick to not do too much. Of like when because Rick has so many comments about other people and I'm gonna hold them in place, and she was quick to come like, all right, Rick, not too much, because you had done this. And when she even heard what he was talking about and so on and so forth, in some ways Trish wasn't really bothered, but I think it brought back a lot of that hurt and trauma for her. And the thing with Rick is this: Rick is. He's not for me. He's not trying to attract me. But I think predators, I'm calling him a predator. I think that predators like him know how to spot certain personalities in women, and they're able to manipulate that to their benefit. There is no scenario where I see Rick giving up his ways and his antics when he is unhappy with himself or Trish doesn't do something. This is a man who went off on this girl because she joked about going into a mall and buying a fucking swimsuit. And I'm trying to understand how in the hell I know that when you live in California, you live in certain places, certain trips to certain places don't cost as much as it might be, but you taking multiple trips and you claim to only do Uber, tap dancing and all that. I wanted the cast, again, love to get into immigrant finances. What the fuck your finances look like to where you're able to take trips like this, particularly during what the social climate that we're in. If you're claiming to not have money like that and to be struggling financially, and how you're just trying to, I don't get that. I don't get that. So I hope that something tells me we're going to see Rick again. I wouldn't be surprised if Rick and Emma are fucking, because Emma already said her and Rick are the same way, and she was a little friendly with him. I wouldn't be surprised. I hope that if Trish ever sees this, I hope that you don't go back. I hope that even with whoever you find in the future, and I'm definitely wishing Trish a successful pregnancy, that I would like to see her make better decisions for herself. And I feel that Trish is going to be battling. I hope Trish gets out to Madagascar. And here's why I'm going to say that. I think that when we remain in certain cultures and we don't get to experience lifestyles or other people, we get really caught up in our hometown. Like, I'm from Miami, and one of the things I understood growing up is when you're in Miami, there is just a very narrow way of seeing the future of certain situations, especially if you are a man. And I think that with Trish, I feel like that there's a level of complacency and contentness that I recognize even from my hometown that might be present in her culture. And I had made the comment before of like, I would not understand if y'all don't really have running water and you don't have, certain conveniences and luxuries, but you want to have babies. Like, I would not understand it because that's not my culture. And I'm an American, so I'm already in a first world country where I've had the privilege of growing up with certain things and also living a certain way, even in some conditions that people here don't even get to experience. So it is just, I think that I'm just seeing someone to where she has the smarts and potential to be farther than what she is. And if she desires more for herself beyond what may be offered or available in her country, I hope that she is able to take advantage of that opportunity and to blossom into whatever person that she is meant to be. And that's just me putting my own bias into what I may want for this person, and I don't even know her. But I'm going to stop there because I can ramble. And this is the last couple I was going to review. I say this for the last purpose. So I thank you all for listening to this, my thoughts and opinions about these couples and everything. I understand there's a new 90 Day Fiance regular version coming up, and we get our new couples. So I'm going to be doing a video regarding going over the new couples and what I am going to be thinking and judging from what their introductions are prior to the reveal of the premiere of the season. So I would love to know y'all's comments and thoughts about what I said about Rick and Trish, and whether you agree or disagree. I'm all for it. Give it to me. Well, put an umbrella on it. I don't. But I would love to know what y'all are thinking about this situation that and I want to read your comments. I hope that you click that thumbs up and like the video and subscribe to know more of my thoughts and opinions, of course. And y'all have a good evening, a good weekend, and take care. Bye now.